Thank you all for waiting and for all of y'all who sent in the well wishes. I'm back from my break. I'm almost recovered from my flu, so thankfully for that. Today I'm going to talk about a deck that I actually did bring to a WGP and as well as some other local tournaments. And I was thinking of holding off this deck profile, but I figured, you know what, I might as well just talk about it since I had the chance. It's Aelquilibra, and it's time for my leads to get to work. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm DZBT04 here. Today I am back to finish off DZBT04. I believe this is actually the last DZBT04 deck profile I'm doing. I may be wrong. I'm supposed to do Cristiano's sometime this month, maybe next. But we will see. We will see. So this is the Destined One for Dragon Empire. Of course, I'm still doing Dragon Empire decks, and it's probably one of the easiest decks to play because it focuses just around raising power and just beating people to death. And it's really cheap as well. You mostly just need to buy cards from the playset, and then the majority is just like one or two cards from like older sets, from specifically DBT03. Yeah, and that's it. The whole deck is just completed. You don't need your expensive staples like for Revoltis. You don't need your expensive staples like Shenri. You don't need it. You could play it, but that version will lock you into, being counterblast denied, which I'm not really a fan of. So today, my point of playing Aelquilibra is to play not only a relatively more budget-friendly version, but it still works at full capacity, and it will focus around trying to tackle this meta. That's mainly what I was playing Aelquilibra around, and I'll explain the deck choices as I go along. I did bring this to WGP, as I mentioned. I did get a pretty good score. I think 5-2 is pretty nice, but yeah, I skipped dot card, so that sucks. But okay, let's get into this. Really excited to talk about it. It's definitely one of my favorite decks from this set. So yeah, unlike Night Rose, this definitely feels more human to play. So yeah, let's get into that. So the right deck is just the usual. We start off with the crest for our right deck and energy. Energy, as you know, I'm going to link my Divines Explain video, links in the description. Very soon I won't have to link that video anymore, because by then it's been a year and you guys should know what energy is all about. For Aelquilibra, just know that this deck uses energy for two of its most important cards, which you will see later. So you never use the EB7 draw. You never use it. You always will prioritize the energy going to the other two guys. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Our grade 0 is General Dragon. Realistically speaking though, you can play anything you want. I don't think it matters, but it's nice. Nice to see some modern Kagero representation. Or at least I think he's Kagero. He smells a lot like Kagero, so I assume he's Kagero. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, nice to have the new Flame Elites. This is Raken Tenfer Dragon. Raken Tenfer. When rolled upon by Gatling Cannon, you can call it to the Vanguard circle. If you do, you Overcharge 1. And his Vanguard skill is important, it's Overcharge. If chosen by the ability of a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Aelquilibra, this unit gains 10. Overcharge is basically the ability that happens when he's pinged by Aelquilibra to gain an extra effect. Now, it just says it needs to be chosen by the ability of Aelquilibra, so in the future, if they do make stronger Aelquilibras and they change it to not just give 5k or maybe just another effect, it wouldn't matter, because the Overcharge ability just happens as long as it's chosen by Aelquilibra. So just future-proofing here, because I know for a fact, down the line, someone is going to ask me that question, so let me make it very clear. Overcharge only triggers if your grade 3 Aelquilibra Vanguard chooses the unit. It doesn't have to be for power, doesn't have to be for effect. As long as Aelquilibra chooses the unit, you are selected, Overcharge triggers. Most of them tend to gain power for Overcharge, but there are some utility-based effects you should know. Raken Tenfer is relevant because he's one of the best rearguards to get out early, because he's rolled upon. So generally speaking, you would start off the game by calling him to a back row rearguard circle, and then you can combine it with some of your early game aggression, spoiler, and later on down the line, even if your early game guy dies, you can just move Raken Tenfer up when you're on Aelquilibra. Soul Blast 2, you give this guy an additional 10, he automatically becomes a 23k beater against a grade 2 Vanguard, or grade 3. Which is insane, because, just one guy from your right deck gives you so much value. You would say, wow, I'm afraid. And you know what? You should be afraid. Have you read what the grade 2 does? The grade 2 is absolutely monstrous. Gatling Cannon Dragon. When this unit is rolled upon by grade 3 is Aelquilibra, this card name. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Choose up to one grade 3 or lower from among them. Reveal it and add it to the hand. And put the rest at the bottom. If you added a unit with the overcharge ability, you soul charge 1. Now, most of this damn deck is overcharged, right? So you will always get a soul charge. But that's not my concern with Gatling Cannon. It adds anything from the top 3. I don't get how they printed this. That seems really good to me. Anything. You can now just be like, oh, I'm fighting a Strike deck set, right? Okay, I'll just add the Sanctitude from the top 3 to my hand. Oh, I'm fighting a deck that needs me to guard grade 0s like Chrono Jet. I'll just, add a trigger or maybe the over trigger to my hand. Why not? Oh, I'm fighting, a guy that's really powerful and will force me to give out a lot of advantage early. Why not I just add my spell? I can add anything. I can even add the freaking Persona right to my hand, which ensures that my grade 4 is even more devastating. No. You know what? That's not even that bad. Oh, I'm fighting Shiranui. I'm just gonna add ladder. I don't get how they were allowed legally to get away with this, to print such an obnoxious effect on a right deck card. And you know what? I like it. I think it's rare for us to get right deck cards that are, relatively more general to a strategy, but yet locked into a certain strategy, like how Bar searches for any grade 1 on the planet. This is really good for a top 3. Yeah, top 3 is not very wide, but the fact that you can add anything is so mind-boggling to me. I cannot tell you how much utility this guy actually gives me. The soul charge one is nice, given that Aelquilibra's tax later is very expensive, but this deck gets enough soul for you to live on till turn 5 and reliably kill the opponent. So I don't really get the deal with that. But realistically speaking, while you will prioritize the overcharge, Gatling Cannon allows you to toolbox out of it, so you could add anything based on your matchup. So that's one of the strengths of Aelquilibra. Definitely is one of the key cards. I know they can't ban commons nowadays in Divines, but if Aelquilibra becomes tier 0, this is my first target. This is the first guy I'm going for. I'm not even going for Xiaohu. Aelquilibra, Soul Blast 2, choose 3 of your units and you gain 5. If 2 or more with the overcharge ability are chosen, draw 1 against them. Yeah, so that's pretty nice. So basically it's Holy Charging Raw for my fellow 2010 nerds. I'm not fully recovered from my flu. But yeah, I mean, it gives a free 10 as long as you build the deck accordingly as God intended. That is pretty good, yeah. And a draw 1, yeah, so it's a +1. You know who else draws 1 for their main Vanguard skill? Rotovisor. Yeah, you thought I forgot him, huh? The second skill is Divine Skill, which means you only get to trigger it once per game. If your opponent's Vanguard is greater or greater, CB1, choose 2 of your Vanguards and you gain 5. If your opponent has 4 or less cards in the damage zone, deal them a damage directly, and trigger checked by this effect gets minus 10k. So realistically speaking, it cannot shut down an over trigger, which, sucks if your opponent's just really skilled, but if not though, that is pretty good. You get to prevent your opponent's defensives, and as long as your opponent's damage is 4 or less, realistically, if you're playing an aggressive deck like Aelquilibra, that shouldn't be a problem. You should be rushing and pushing them. So the idea is that, it won't matter. So even if they are at 4 damage, yeah, sure, take another one. And they probably are in a very bad losing spot. Aelquilibra's numbers can scale insanely, even more than Night Rose, even more than most decks in this format, I dare say. So yeah, definitely don't sleep on it. It's not as simplistic as you think it is. There's a lot of complexity in terms of calculating your numbers and charting out your attack strategy beforehand. And I'm gonna help you with that. So for our grade 3s, we start off with 4 copies of Aelquilibra, 1 in the right deck. So all very basic here, but this deck, like I said, it's built on a relatively more cheaper axis, but to focus on overcharge. So I'm going to play 3 Panzer Strike, 3 copies of Scales, and then a copy of the Regalis Peace Ladder. At least this is what has worked for me so far in my past 3 tournaments. I'm very sure once we get to DZBT05, this list will change, okay? So I just want to specify that because I'm very sure someone will ask me that in the comments. So okay, I'm covering my ass here. Aelquilibra, Persona right, is pretty good. You don't need to play, max number Persona, but given how daily this deck scales, get it? You might as well go with it. There is a scenario where if you want to play pure, Aelquilibra beatdown, you can actually minus the number of Personas. I don't think that's impossible, But I would say, at least for this current game state environment, yeah, definitely just keep your 3 personas. Again, maybe by the time you hit set 5 with Odium's meta and, you know, with Uncle Grandpa and Love and Berry, that may change. But from what I see, this is definitely the correct route going forward. So just keep your persona at copies, they'll help you more rather than not. Regatta's Piece ladder. This video was filmed pre-ban list for DZBT04. So if Shiranui has completely been crucified on this ban list, congratulations, and then you can choose to no longer play ladder. Unfortunately though, my better senses tell me that's not going to be the case, so I will keep ladder in this list. And also it stops Shoujo pretty bad. It stops most control decks. Aelquilibra is a deck that relies very heavily on its board, so actually having a white board without protection sucks balls. So that's why I would tell you to play ladder. But, you know, there's a chance, like I said, this video is filmed pre-ban list, so if Shiranui and Shoujo Doji are crucified left and right, then yeah, sure, we could take this card out. It's not a must play, but given that, you know, when you play competitively in WGPs, you're fighting against all matchups, I want to come prepared. Personally, that's just who I am, but you don't need to take my advice 100%. There is a scenario where you can take this out and play 4 Scales instead. Scales is basically Colombard 2.0. It's a very good recursion order. It puts the entire Night Rose Encyclopedia to shame. Link in the description. And yeah, it's just really, really effective of a revival order, if you ask me. Honestly, this is what I wanted to see in Night Rose. Why does Dragon Empire get all the cool shit? You play this with Vanguard Aelquilibra, count +1, choose 2 units with different names that grade 3 or less with the Overcharge ability, and call them to the Vanguard circle from your drop zone. Realistically, the targets you will always fish out will be your attackers, mainly your Panzer Shrek, whom we'll get into later, has a suicide complex, and Xiaohu, who most people with brain cells will always try to kill, because Xiaohu is very threatening. But there is a scenario for you to use this to build your board early on, so you could basically just use it to call all your grade 1 overcharge targets. That is completely viable, it's completely sane, it completely makes sense. Especially for Frieza. Frieza is really good in the resource department, and she also has a suicide complex, but you don't really do that. You don't really call Frieza. Again, it depends. I would strongly say it depends on what exactly you're looking for. But Scales as a card is sorry. Scales is just way too strong of a card to physically ignore. I would say this is definitely one of the best cards for Aelquilibra in terms of set 1 wise. So this is definitely one of the reasons why you would pick the deck up. So you would play this at 3 to 4. I know some people are against playing at 4. My only recommendation is to play 4 if you don't want to play ladder. That's realistically all I'm allowed to say, but definitely this card is one of the key cards of Aelquilibra, so I would definitely recommend you keeping Scales. But just do remember, it's 2 units with different names with overcharge, so you can't use this to just like call double Xiaohu. That's cheating. If they do that, please call your judge. I'm sure they'll help you out. Last but not least is Panzer Shrek. Panzer Shrek is a card that is probably the most controversial card in Aelquilibra. Most people, when you talk to them about Dragon Empire, they are very hard-boiled on the whole mono-red argument about how Fort Revoltis is the greatest thing on earth since the Sudan 2. And the stupidest part is, I completely disagree. The problem with playing the whole mono-red package is that it really forces you into an early aggro game that some matchups just beat you. Like, if you fight against Lianorn, you are losing. I'm sorry, that's a fact. You are losing that fight. So that's why I've chosen to play more mid-range with Panzer Shrek. And Panzer Shrek is the most devastating grade 3 in my opinion for turn 3. Because, I'll read you his skill. Overcharge, when this unit attacks, if chosen by Aelquilibra, grade 3 to Vanguard, yada yada. Energy Blast 3 gains 15,000 power. At the end of turn, retire it, draw a card. Energy Blast 3 to retire it to draw a card is technically a net 0 or -1 draw. So most people who have been following what I've been saying about energy would have known that. But I think if you take that at face value, you are solely underestimating the strongest point of this deck, which is the number. It's 13,000 power, plus 15,000 power, plus 5,000 power. My friends, that is 33,000 power in a singular card attacking a grade 2 Vanguard. You have to understand that. The guy is literally at infancy. He's literally a 10,000 body. Like, this is him. This is your opponent. He's 10,000 power. You are 33. You are going to crush his balls. Like, I don't get how this is not favored in Aelquilibra. I really don't. Going first, this is a death sentence. And going second against, you're a pathetic 13k, that's still 25k guard. Minimum. And no, for some reason, nobody wants to play Panzer Strike anymore. Everyone just rather play Foreign Revolters. Honestly, I agree to a small extent. I do agree that Panzer Strike is probably the weakest card in Aelquilibra and could be removed by set 5. Again, this was filmed before the Aelquilibra reveals for set 5, so I don't know what's in there. But from my experience, this thing is freaking threatening, and it will win you games by itself. That number is way too threatening. Realistically, yes, by the time you reach a Divine Skill turn, your front row should be double Shell Hoop, but even if you still have a Panzer Strike on the board, he will threaten for even perfect guard or even pass over trigger numbers. That is how insane this card is, and I don't get why people sleep on it. I think if you play 4 copies of Panzer Strike, if say you bought a 4th copy, I think that would be a mistake. At this point, you're playing way too many Great 3s in this deck, as you would remember. That is a lot of bricks to carry in the Dragon Empire deck, and that basically spells the end for your tempo. But I think 3 copies is still very reasonable. I don't think there is a real reason to really turn Panzer Strike down. Even if you just cut him down to 2 copies in a deck, I still think that's worth playing in circulation. Again, I stress, if they change the way Overcharge works in set 5, this guy could be completely irrelevant, and I would be okay with that. But as long as you're playing in the set 4 meta, if you're playing in the Night Rose format, I can't recall a format, she didn't even win WGP Malaysia. As long as she's in this format in tiered place somehow, this is life ending. Okay, that's all I'm going to stress. I've talked too much about Panzer Strike. But this guy is freaking insane. Please stop sleeping on him. I will spend another 30 minutes talking about how good this guy is if you need to, because this thing is underrated as hell. I just want to know. You know what? Leave your comments below. Tell me why you don't play Panzer Strike. Honest. Tell me why. I want to know. I feel like fighting someone today. And you know what? Speaking of fighting, our grade 2s is Gatling Cannon Dragon. I already covered him in the right deck, so I don't think I'll cover him much longer. He is still pretty strong. We play 4 Shell Hoop, and then we play for Brachioforce. Very simple lineup. Brachioforce is someone that I've rizzed up on this channel about 1 million times, so I don't think you need to hear about him from me. He's just at the end of battle that this unit attack hits, retire this unit, draw a card, choose one opponent's rearguards, and retire it. Brachioforce is really good in the Lianorn meta, which is the meta we're in right now. This guy completely shreks the Lianorn matchup because he just rips the board early in the early game. And I have some news for you. Combined with Rakan Tenver, it's an 18k column on turn 2, and on turn 3, it's a 33k column. You know who else was a 33k column? This guy! Yeah, this is the shit we're resorting to play in this game. So, realistically, if you're threatening for 2 33k columns on turn 3 against a literal baby, yeah, most people will just die. Right? Most people will just give up and concede the game. But, I want to stress here, you don't need to wait for that. He's not overcharged. He's one of the 2 cards in this deck that's not overcharged. So he's actually not that good in the late game, because in the late game, you always want Shell Hoop. But this is one of your cards you look for in the early game because he's completely devastating in Aelquilibra. Yeah, I may have hyped him way too much for other decks like Vermilion. Yeah, he may not be working, but in this deck though, he's definitely working, 100%. Unlike Foreign Revolters, this guy lives the hype, and he even can play without CB deny. Which is something a lot of people do against Aelquilibra, but with stuff like Brachioforce, there is no hope of denying it. You just have to cough out a large amount of cards in your hand to guard early, and that puts you very vulnerable in the late game to, the Divine Cannon, pew pew, and then you just roll over and die. So you can tell that this deck was built with a very specific plan in mind, so time to talk about the apex of this plan, which is Shell Hoop. Shell Hoop is not that good. Shell Hoop is very serviceable as a card, but I think it's less of what he does and what he represents that really kills people. Xiaohu is basically Aelquilibra's multi-attacker, and what he does is very simple. So I'm gonna tell it to you. Xiaohu is, during your turn, if you have 3 or more units with the overcharge ability, this unit gains 5. Do note that this is an ability that works regardless of you or your opponent's grade. So if you want to rush with Xiaohu, yes, he is a 15k beater. Pretty good if you ask me, but realistically, you never rush with Xiaohu. Unless your opponent's a complete idiot, you don't want to leave Xiaohu early on the board because he is very valuable later in the game. When your Vanguard attacks a grade 3 or greater unit, if this unit was chosen by the ability of your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Aelquilibra in its card name, Energy Blast 3, stand this unit, and it gains 10 until the end of the turn. It is once per turn. I just want to say that first. So if you pull Drunk Vetter, tough luck. You don't get that. But yeah, it is pretty good, especially on the Divine Skill turn. If you can get a double Xiaohu out surrounding your Aelquilibra Vanguard, generally this is game. Your opponent doesn't really survive past that. It's like what some people call it, a talent show. Yeah, but Xiaohu is a card you look for by turn 4 to have on the board at least 1 or if not 2 copies of, which is why we play stuff like Scales. Because generally speaking, with how fast you burn through the deck, Soul Charge and Soul Blast, you should be finding Xiaohu eventually. But yeah, just keep that in mind. That's probably what it's gonna do. Again, this is the quintessential multi-attacker, so you do need to play this at 4. Definitely part of the win con, but he's not part of the winning strategy because he doesn't really help for rush. You don't rush this guy, but you could. You could. Upgrade ones. Finally, 1 copy of Rakan Tenfer. If you are very strict on a budget, if you don't come from a place of great affluence, you can play more copies of Rakan Tenfer in the main deck. I think it's fine. We play 4 Yadil. We play 4 Fariza. We play 4 Shiha, which is someone I'm going to talk about later. And then 4 PGs, including a Sanctitude. Again, the reason why I put Sanctitude in here is because this was my competitive list. So I have to be prepared for strat deck sets. But again, if you don't have a Sanctitude, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Rakan Tenfer, I've already covered him before, so I'm just going to skip him. I'll talk about Shihab later. Fariza. Fariza is the counter charger that every Dragon Empire new deck gets. When this unit boosts, if this unit was chosen by a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Aelquilibra in its card name, until the end of that battle, this unit gains 10. And at the end of the battle, if you've not CC'd this turn, retire itself and CC 1. So, yeah, it's pretty good. All the overcharge units gain power and Fariza is no exception, and she retires herself to countercharge 1, which will definitely play into Scales. So if you want to make Scales free, you can just use Scales, Fariza, and 1 other overcharge card, and that will refund the cost of Scales virtually perfectly. Fariza is definitely very important because she ensures you can use cards like Scales and Yadil very freely without being CB denied. Again, if you are playing the win more variant before Revoltist, that's fine, but Fariza is a card you only get to use once per turn because it checks if you have not countercharged this turn. So do keep that in mind. Again, this is a card you could rush with in the back row, but you do want to keep her around for her to use a countercharge because the countercharge will help you in matchups, especially when you're denied. Just so we're clear. Yadil is our Hanada half away of the Aelquilibra core. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying this again. When this unit is placed on Rearguard Circle, if you have 2 or more units with the Overcharge ability, CB1, draw 1, Soul Charge 1. Do note though, that skill is purely up to the number of Overcharge units on the board, which means, if you have been paying attention, which I really hope you have, if you have a Rearguard Rakan Tenfer on turn 2, you can completely, and it is valid to do so, you can just call Yadil to another circle nearby, Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 1, draw 1. And you can just keep him on board from then. So realistically, he's a Hanada half away from turn 2 if, you just played the right line correctly. But if not, if let's say you didn't get your hands on Rakan Tenfer Dragon, yeah, you can just call 1 other Overcharge unit, then you call Yadil, then you use his skill, and it's pretty good. And again, he has the standard Overcharge ability, which is, if this unit was chosen by, in a Great 3 or Greater Vanguard with Aelquilibra in its card name, this turn he gains 10,000 power. Standard stuff, you already know it by now. So yeah, he is the Overcharge pluser of this deck, in the sense that he is the guy that gets you a draw and plus on. This is a higher CB priority target than Fort Revolters. I hate to be that guy, but this is the higher priority one. So just keep that in mind. Most people will CB deny Aelquilibra because they're scared of this effect or Fort Revolters. But realistically speaking, if you are already in a winning position, you can just call him down and not even use the CB skill, and frankly, it will be a-okay. And last but not least, for my silly tech pick and rush option, it is Shihab. Shihab is someone I have also hyped out on this channel a lot before. Mainly in my Vyrgilla deck profile, I believe. I will put the links in the description, I think. Yeah, I will put the link in the description there. So, yeah. So, why am I playing Shihab in this list and not Shenri? It's not for monetary reasons, because I finally managed to afford Shenri. Yeah, I took another part-time job. I got it. Please stop whining. But Shihab serves a greater purpose because of the way Shihab is written. And that is, he's very straightforward. When he's placed on Rearguard Circle, gains 5,000 power, which means he's always going to be an 11k body during his debut turn, which is nice. He can attack grade 2 Vanguards, he can help you with a nice grade 1 booster. It's pretty solid. But his main effect is what you're most concerned about, which is that when you want to discard a card for your right deck cost, you can just move him to the soul instead. This means that Shihab will never get his soul movement denied, and that is very important because Shenri checks if your opponent has one or less rear guards, or if you played an order this turn. If you play an order this turn, it's fine. Scales is a grade 3 order, so you just need to wait 2 turns before you can trigger Scales. The problem is that you're playing in the Lianorn meta, and if you're playing in the Lianorn meta, there is a lot of guys who are not afraid to call full boards on turn 1. Turn 1. When the hell will you get the time to use Shenri? You can't. And that's why most Aelquilibra players are losing right now. Because they all bought into this lie that Shenri will always be effective. And then they don't perform because they get swarmed by people who are actually willing to early aggro, and they go, oops, I didn't prepare for that. I did, however. And that's why I'm recommending you to play Shihab. I don't want to sound like that one Japanese Twitter guy, you know who I'm talking about, who says that Shihab is the greatest card on earth. It's not. This guy definitely has his weaknesses, and he's probably on the cutting board by the time set 5 comes out. But if I have to be a betting man, this guy is the easiest card to play in the deck by just searching him on the early game, using him for the soul, and then funneling it straight into Aelquilibra for turn 3. There is no other way to say it. If you open Shihab by turn 3, it's too late. Just use him for PG fodder, use him to cut, use him for anything else. I don't care. This guy is very effective in early game because he will always give you that soul and that +1 in terms of you not needing to discard a card from your hand. Okay? That is the long and short of Shihab. The reasons why we play him in Vyrgilla and the reasons why we play him in Aelquilibra are completely different, but it is still underlined by the same card decks. So, long story short, if you want to try Shenri, make sure you're playing Shenri in a format where your locals just doesn't know what the hell early rush is. Then Shenri is definitely better. However, if you're fighting against anyone with a competent brain cell or people that just know what early rush is, or just play Stoicheia, damn it, then yes, please, for the love of God, put in Shihab instead. You won't regret it. And last but not least, our grade zeros. Our grade zeros, we have General Dragon. We play 8 crits. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Play 4 heals, pretty obvious. 3 draws is a draw P39 deck. And draw Feather, the Overtrigger. At this point, I don't feel I need to explain these things to you anymore, so I won't be. And that will wrap up my deck profile for Aelquilibra in his starting deck profile. Honestly though, Aelquilibra is a deck that has thoroughly impressed me. So far this year, most of the decks that come out in their first set are really bad. Like Rotavisor, Night Rose, Blangimaya, Reziel, I would say even. Like a lot of the decks that have come out this year for their Wave 1 have been catastrophically horrible. But this guy? No, not at all. With a very small package of 8 generics and the rest of the deck coming from the set, this is by far one of the most cheap and fun decks I've ever played for this year from a main set. And that is shocking because this is coming from the guy who would much rather pay another, I don't know, 6,000 yen for another 4 Blaster Blade promos. And I'm telling you, this is really fun. It's very easy too. It's honestly very effective in terms of meta play. If you have a person in your team who is not very educated, smart, aware, breathing, he can definitely play this deck. He definitely can, because this is a deck that requires very little effort to play, and it's just that fun. If you know your basics, if you know how to play, Dragon Empire's Grade 2 game and tempo, you will be rewarded even further, because this deck can capitalize on the early game to push into the turn 4 with very effective Divine Skill. And generally speaking, that is game. That is it. Even decks like Bruce cannot compete with the rush that Aelquilibra can bring. But again, now here's some obligatory weaknesses. Yeah, Aelquilibra, he is very piece reliant, so if he fights, a control deck, if you don't have ladder, generally speaking, that is just the end of your life. If you fight a Blankmire and he goes first, you just lose. Stuff like that does happen. But despite all that, I would still recommend you to pick up Aelquilibra if you are a fan of Dragon Empire, if you're a fan of the modern anime, if you just like cool fire dragons with large number. This is definitely the deck for you. I have zero regrets playing this. I think this is really fun. And I'm glad I brought this guy to tournaments, because frankly, I think I would have lost if I brought Nyros. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, I will put all relevant links in the description. So just so that we can all be caught up to speed. I'm pretty sure at the time that this video is released, the Aelquilibra set 5 reveals should be out. So just in case, you guys see it by then, I would just like to throw my hat in the ring and say I am almost 100% sure that the future support of Aelquilibra will have a top 7 searcher for the Overcharge unit. I'm almost 100% sure that someone down the line is gonna get guard restrict or gonna get at least a way to retire opponent's rear guards. I'm pretty sure that is the direction Aelquilibra is going for. So let me know in the comments if I'm right, because the chances are I'm not. Yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.